So this is our first night of Introduction to Spiritual Mind Treatment. Thank you all for being here tonight. And what we're going to do is start with a spiritual mind treatment. What a surprise. We start every class with that. Welcome. Good to have you here. So I invite you just to relax and to center yourself, maybe let go of whatever has been going on today so that you can be absolutely present in this moment, at least as present as is reasonable for you. And we'll know the truth. We'll know that there is a presence, a power, an essence, a force that is truly the essence of everything. It is that which animates all of life. It is all powerful and creative. And through it, we have our very being. And when we remember that and live from that understanding, we become incredibly powerful people to do what we've come to do and to be who we've come to be. So I know that this class on spiritual mind treatment is an entryway into a very powerful practice that can make quite the difference in one's life. And I'm so grateful to be amongst those who are in the room and to be touching the lives of all those that are watching this video online. So this is our work, and we embrace it, and we move through the aspects of this in a way that truly does enhance our lives. And certain that this is so, I simply let this be all that it is in gratitude and love, and invite everybody to say with me, and so it is. Yay, great. Thank you again for being here. So this is the first night of a 4-night class. As I was saying before we started recording, there are other people that won't be here tonight, but that will join us later. So welcome, Deetra. Good to see you. So we're going to, here we go. We're going to go through this material and talk about this idea of spiritual mind treatment. And what we're going to cover tonight in our first class are these 3 topics: God, prayer, and recognition. And that may not make sense to you right now, but it will. So I just think I'd like to start with my story about spiritual mind treatment. It was 1984. Didn't Orwell write a book about that? That I returned from living in Sydney, Australia. And I had been back in my hometown of Miami, Florida for 3 days. And on the third day, God, this is starting to sound weird. I was driving down a road not too far from where I grew up called Miller Road, and there was a building, or a series of buildings, and a couple of signs. One sign said Center for Positive Living. Did nothing for me. But the other sign said Science of Mind. Science of Mind. And so I went in and asked what Science of Mind was. And the woman that came out from the back told me something. I don't know what she said, but she invited me to come on Sunday, which I did. And immediately, I showed up exactly at the time as a new class was starting. And the class was on treatment. And so I started that class. And that woman that came out from the back, her name was Barbara. And I was very impressed with her.
Beautiful woman.
Yes, beautiful woman. And an amazing teacher. And so I started this class on spiritual mind treatment. And they started talking about these 5 steps and the way it worked. And my immediate thought was, oh, this is not going to work. I have no interest in memorizing things and doing things in some predetermined order. That's just not my thing. But I stuck it out. And I learned the system. And I applied the system. And sure enough, it changed my life. So what I bring to you, I don't know if it'll resonate with you right away, but I want you to give it some time and let it kind of just seep in. I hope that you get a copy of my book, which will be on sale in the bookstore during the break, and which you can also buy online. It's available through Amazon. And it's called 5 Steps to Freedom, an Introduction to Spiritual Mind Treatment, which is what we're talking about. So I actually wrote this book for this class. And now it's actually part of the curriculum for our entire organization worldwide. And so that's been kind of handy. And so I'm going to relate or refer to it and also give you some reading assignments in it. So it's just so you don't have to struggle for it. It's Really easy to see. It's got a big 5 on the front. At least the current iteration of it does. And I would also note that the foreword in this book is written by a woman named Marilyn Leo. And Dr. Leo has become a dear friend over the last 30 years. She is one of only 2 people that I know personally who knew Ernest Holmes. She actually grew up in his neighborhood. Her father was one of Ernest's lifelong confidants and supporters. And in fact, he and Ernest Holmes met when he was still very young and was in some kind of a recreational club. I think it was in Venice Beach. And Ernest was working at Venice Beach as a recreation director. It was only a short time that he had that, but he had already begun developing this idea of spiritual mind treatment. And apparently her father had some warts, standard things that kids get. And Ernest explained to him that he could treat or pray over those warts and they would go away. And they did. And it was like, that changed his life, wow. And he and Ernest were together the rest of their lives because of that incident. So Marilyn is this amazing presence. She's in her 80s now and has just wonderful stories to share, has written a number of books about Ernest and about our movement. And she graced me with the foreword to my book. So enough about that. So the first thing I want to talk about is this thing that we call science of mind and how Dr. Holmes actually defined it. He defined science of mind as a correlation of the laws of science, the opinions of philosophy, and the revelations of religion as applied to human needs and aspirations of man. That pretty much encapsulates what he was working on. He believes in science, and science is part of the name of this movement. And the reason that the word science is there is because our teaching is provable. So the idea of science is that it is provable. Obviously, there's philosophy built in this entire, many people call it a philosophy. And he was never ready to let go of the idea of religion having a role in this. Seeing religion as the part of this that is the revelation of the divine. So that's the name. That's what we use. And that's what people refer to. Ralph Waldo Emerson said there is one mind common to all. So when we talk about mind, we're not talking about my mind pointing to my head and your mind. The philosophy says there's only one mind, and that we all use that mind. And that mind is the mind of God. And so it's an absolute, but it individualizes through each of us. That's why I believe that we have access to all information. And that if we can be quiet enough, we can actually reveal that. The revelation of truth is available to anyone. Anyone can do this. So we use this term science of mind, meaning the mind of God, and that there is only one. What I discovered in the midst of this teaching is that there's only 2 things going on. There's only 2 divine actions that are even possible. Anybody want to take a guess at what they are? Okay, then I can do it. Expression and experience. We express into the world and we experience the result of that. So our expressions and what we say is that what we think and what we believe is impressed upon the mind of God, and that mind of God actually reflects it back to us in physical form. And so everything that we're thinking about and putting our attention on is actually being created automatically by the law, by spiritual law, not based on our preferences, but based on what we put our attention on, so that it becomes important for us to discipline our minds to put our attention on things that we want and not things that we don't want. To be a little clearer about this, expression is directive, meaning that it's directing the law of spirit. Everything that we express, everything that we think, everything that we do impresses the law, and the law reflects it back to us. Have you ever noticed that you can start the day in a really bad mood? And it seems like all day long stuff comes at you to just make you more angry, more upset, more uneasy. It's like there's a domino effect that's going on, that every time we get past something, there's something else there that's going to just tick us off. That's how the law works, and it's working all the time, so that it becomes our job to look inwardly to create the outcome on the outside that we want. That's the general premise that we work from. And experience is receptive, meaning we receive that experience and it influences us. If we look at the Science of Mind symbol, for those who are in the room here, it's on the wall over there. It's a circle. It's got two parallel lines that run laterally, and it's got what looks like a V that runs through it. And the V is the action mark on it, meaning that everything starts from a thought at the top of that model, that invisible part of the mind of God. It goes through the law. The law of spirit is the middle part, and then it becomes manifest in physical form in the bottom. That's the expression coming into manifestation. What the top part of that thing looks like a V is how we experience the result of that expression. We see it happen. We're in physical form, or at least our bodies are, and we're in a constant state of using our senses. And what comes out of that is that we have an experience. And from that experience, we draw conclusions and we express again. And then maybe the same thing happens over and over and over, or maybe we see it differently and it changes. But we're in charge of all of it. We're in charge of every single thing that is happening in our lives. Most people want to go, no, I'm not. I didn't make that happen. That had nothing to do with me. He did it. Well, he didn't do it. You did it. You did it through your thinking. Could be consciously, could be subjectively, could be subconsciously, but at some level, the possibility of that outcome to have occurred in your life is about you. It has to all fit together with everything else that's happening in physical form, but it has to be about you. And that's not a blaming. In fact, that's a very empowering concept, because if you created the mess you're dealing with right now, you create something else. So none of us are stuck in the current situation. Yet what most people do in life is something happens that they don't want, and they fixate on it. And they go, I want to get rid of it. This has got to go away. I hate this. I don't want it here. Get it out of here. But the whole point of everything you're doing there is focusing on the problem. And the idea is that's not the solution. It's never the solution. So something else has to happen, and we do that through mind. That's how we do it. So where are we going here? So we're going to talk about prayer tonight, this idea, because spiritual mind treatment is a form of prayer. It's not your average form of prayer, and that's what I'm about to explain to you. Anyone here heard of Greg Braden? Okay, a few guys. Greg's an amazing guy. He's actually trained as an engineer, but got into metaphysics and has written some incredible books talking about how this whole concept of creation works from a very logical, rational, educated mind. Yet he can see how this works. And he wrote a book called Secrets of the Lost Mode of Prayer. I think it was his fourth book. I've got it up on the shelf. I could have brought it down. Maybe I will later. Anyway, he says in the beginning of this book that there are these four modalities that are very common in the idea of prayer, and that everyone pretty much knows them. And I want to share them with you now. The first one is bargaining prayer. That's the prayer that people do when their back's against the wall. That's when something terrible is about to happen or is in the midst of happening, and people want to work a deal with the divine. And they go, oh God, if you'll get me out of this mess, I swear I'll never do blah blah again. That's bargaining prayer. We've all done it. At least I've done it. I suppose that most people in that moment of crisis reach out to some unknown factor, believing that somehow they could help. It could help. I don't know. It hasn't worked for me. But again, it's something that everyone does in that moment of desperation. What is that common phrase? There are no atheists in a foxhole. Everybody's saying, God, please get me through this, as though that's how it works. But, that doesn't stop people from doing it. But that's what bargaining prayer is. Most people know about that. Petitioning prayer is the more common, most probably common kind of prayer. It's the prayer that's done to ask for something from the divine. But it doesn't necessarily need to be in a state of angst and freak out. It's just what people do. They pray, oh Lord, please help us do whatever it is we're trying to do. It's asking for the divine to intercede and to get us through stuff. Not at that critical level, an ongoing level. I would say that traditional Christian ministers do that prayer all the time, every day, every time they have a meeting with somebody and they're praying for somebody. That's the prayer they do. It's a petitioning prayer. It's pretty standard. It's the way most people think prayer is. The next one is ritual prayer. That can take on a lot of different forms. In the Catholic Church, it's things like the Rosary, doing Our Fathers or Hail Mary, and those kinds of repetitive prayers. Truly, it could be any kind of mantra, anything that the one would be doing as some kind of a ritual in the discipline of their faith. Nothing wrong with it. And my understanding, although that's never been part of my experience of religion, those that do it have shared with me, and I get the sense that it's done not as punishment, but to get forgiveness. That if I go and do these repetitive prayers, that somehow the divine will forgive me for my transgressions. So it has a punitive angle to it. And if you believe that it's helping, I have no trouble believing someone could do their 10 Hail Marys and feel great, feel like I took care of it, it's good now, everything's good. So it has some benefit to a lot of people. I wouldn't use it. Doesn't work. It's not something that I would engage in. And the fourth one, which that seems a little I don't know, like the idea of meditation being a form of prayer isn't what I see meditation as. But what do I know? Let's call it prayer. Meditation to me is about clearing the mind. It's about centering oneself. And there's so many kinds of meditation. You can meditate in silence. You can meditate through guided imagery. You can meditate looking at a candle. There's a thing called walking meditation, and it goes on and on and on, all kinds of ways. And our movement actually embraces the idea of meditation. And I have used it much in my life, so has Barbara, my wife. But it's, to me, it isn't directive. It's that listening. It's that moving into a state of peace. Wonderful. But it doesn't actually help you direct your life in a certain direction. So those are them. Those are the four. Now, the name of the book is Secrets of the Lost Mode of Prayer. So what's this lost thing? So to encapsulate what Greg wanted to say about this, I have one statement from his book. The lost modality found in many ancient spiritual practices is knowing and declaring that the desired outcome already exists. And he says in ancient transcripts that he's gone to Tibet and to other areas of the world where there are ancient scripts and documents, and studied them and talked with those people that care for those documents. And this seems to be something that was quite widely believed many, many hundreds, thousands of years ago, is that the way to pray is to know that the thing you're calling forth in your prayer already is so. And it's interesting that we end all of our spiritual mind treatments with the word, and so it is. Meaning that it's already so. So this connects us with that ancient idea. In fact, there are people that call the greater movement that we're in New Thought and Ancient Wisdom. And I would say that the thing that makes it ancient is that idea right there, is that we're working from the idea that what we're calling forth in our lives may not be visible to us, but it already exists. And our job is to bring it into the light so we can see it. So that's the point of this work that we do. And here's a quote from The Science of Mind by Dr. Holmes. The power is not so much in the statements we use as it is in the consciousness our words induce. They help us to become aware of that which already exists. So he mirrors that idea of what already exists. And he's saying to us, and I think this is really important, I think the biggest challenge that most people have with spiritual mind treatment is thinking they don't know the right words. That they're not as articulate with it. It doesn't matter. One of my favorite stories from this center is about a 12-year-old who took these classes and actually took the first year of what we call practitioner training, where he was on a track to become a licensed practitioner of our movement. Now they require you to be 18 to do that. At the time, there was no requirement, so we were going to make a big deal out of him being the youngest practitioner. And when he would treat, things would happen. And would he treat, would a 12-year-old treat, in some exotic way that just stunned you with his ability to reveal things? No, he just said it. He just said, I know that this one has the money they need. Or he would say it was that easy. And what was working was that he really believed it. He really believed it. And the difference between a 12-year-old and us is that we've had enough stuff go bad in our lives that we're not that convinced that we really can do this. Where a 12-year-old goes, I can do this? Oh yeah, I can do this. Sure, why not? So they do it, and they do it well. And that's, his name actually was Isaac Rubin. His father's our music director. And he's in his 20s now. But he was quite amazing in those days in his ability. He would treat for his classmates out on the recreation field at his elementary school. And I gave him a project in a class. When we began our summer prosperity class one year, we gave everybody in the class, and there were over 100 people here, we gave everybody a $10 bill. And we challenged them to go out and turn it into $100. The next week, Isaac walks in the class and walks up and bangs down $100. I said, what'd you do? He said, it was easy. I went around to my neighbors and told them that I would treat for them, and that they would get what they wanted, and that I wanted $10. And he had his $100. He just didn't slow him down at all. And he just had no filters that were going to get in his way. So let's all do this with the mind of a 12-year-old, and we'll get a lot further on this, a lot quicker. So we're inducing consciousness. We're convincing ourselves through the words that we're saying in treatment that what we believe to be so really is so. And when we are convinced that it's so, then it's irresistible to spiritual law to take it and create it into form. Just that easy. This may be a place to ask. Has anybody got any thoughts on any of this that they want to share with the class? Then I did. Okay. Well, Deidre, let me get you a mic here. You may not have heard, but it isn't playing into the room, but it is being recorded. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
The Braden, the 4 modalities, they all seem to be dualistic to me. What do you say about
I think you could make an argument there's an element of dualism in them, which is the opposite of what we do here. Yeah. Our whole point is that and we'll get into that a lot tonight, but the idea of an outside God, an outside deity to have a relationship with is a very different thing than finding the divine within. Yeah. So, not that the divine isn't out, everything. And we'll talk about the essence of that. But you're probably right. Those 4 things could easily be seen. Yeah, all 4 of them could easily be seen. I wanted to give the meditation one a little space. But, and I would imagine anytime you're trying to negotiate, you're obviously in a dualistic mindset.
And I asked because I just came to Science of Mind 2 years ago.
Right.
And my whole life, I was a Baptist and a Methodist, and I had cousins who were Catholics, and it was always asking some entity to provide or, forgive and things like that.
The standard Judeo-Christian Islamic model.
It seems
It
difficult.
is. It's based on God being separate from us. That's just the way that they see it. And what we see here is that that's not true. That there's really only one thing going on, the mind of God. I'm gonna let you just hang on to that for a minute, okay? Okay. Anything else? Anybody have a thought? Yes. Ah, good. From a practitioner. Ooh.
I just had a thought about meditation when, because I think the ultimate goal of meditation is to open up that oneness and that you are one with the divine. And being one with the divine, things flow. And you may not be thinking about it, but all of a sudden, the mind gets dumped on. It gets downloaded, and when you come out of it, all of a sudden there's a clarity of a lot of things that you really didn't think of, but you opened your mind, and mind already knew what you were thinking.
Right.
So it just, there it is. So
That's
you can get some results out of it, even though you don't really think about it.
right, because it's not the actual practice that creates the results. It's that the practice creates the opportunity for you to be receptive. Okay, which you know, really, you think of prayer mostly as being directive, that it's being stated and it's being asked for, and there's something going on there. And meditation's the opposite; it's receptive. So that the idea is shut up, get your mind to just slow down, so that you can actually be aware that there's other things going on. Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Anybody else? All right, let's see what's coming up next. Oh, the big one. I love this. Anybody who knows Roy Eugene Davis? Good for you.
Read about him.
Yeah. Davis was a devotee of an Indian guru, and but he was from the United States. But he learned the Hindu ways that really are reflective of who we are as a spiritual movement. We don't claim to be Eastern, and if you read the major texts we have, the Science of Mind, it's all Christian oriented. It relates, it shares from the perspective of the Christian, which has to be in this country, or go nowhere. But truly, there's a foundation in it that comes out of the Eastern philosophies. So Davis, this amazing guy, he lived outside of Atlanta. He made his transition just recently. And he wrote this statement that I love, so I'm just going to read it out for you. We pray to God when we think or feel that we are separate from God. When we know God, we pray in God, understanding that prayer is a matter of consciousness interacting only with itself until higher understanding prevails. One may pray to any concept of God. Results will be in accord with the conviction of one's faith and the degree of surrender of one's illusional sense of self. That's potent. Although we may pray for improvements of mundane circumstances, the most satisfying experience is realization of God's wholeness in which nothing is lacking. Isn't that brilliant?
That is beautiful.
Yeah, he's got that down. Just to touch on a couple of pieces of that, he says until higher understanding prevails. Well, there comes a point where maybe prayer isn't even required, where one has a consciousness that is so clear that what needs to show up shows up. So that's, I think, what he's suggesting there, is that prayer is more of a, even the prayers that we do, still rudimentary in the full spectrum of what can happen. And then he says, talks about, I love this, that results will be in accord with the conviction of one's faith, which reminds me of a woman that I knew years ago who, when there was some challenge in her life, she would light a green candle and pray to a particular saint. She was Catholic. But she was so sure that that saint could get her what she wanted that she pretty much got everything she prayed for. And so it isn't for lack of having our specific model. What you believe is what makes it real. So if you believe that someone will always be there for you, there's a real good chance that you'll have the things that you want, even though you're relying on somebody outside of yourself. I have to tell you, this thing we have called practitioners of our teaching, they practice the science of mind. And people go to them and ask them to treat for them. That's not really that much different than an interceding saint. If you think that practitioner has some power to get it done. And I've often said that if you go to a practitioner, if you got something you haven't been able to work out in your life, you haven't got the results you want, go to a practitioner. You don't even have to believe that thing is going to show up in your life. All you have to believe is that the practitioner can make it happen. If you believe the practitioner can make it happen, you're a full partner in that, even though you're not the one doing the treatment. So that idea that he puts there really does work. The idea of a conviction of faith. And the degree of surrender to one's illusional sense of self. And what he means by that is the illusional sense that somehow we're separate. Somehow we're all on our own with this thing. Because we're not. We're intricate aspects of the same mind. And even though we look different, we sound different, we think different, it's the same mind. It's the mind of God. And we're not. That selfhood is ego-based. And it's how we function in a three-dimensional world. So it's not like I'm dissing the idea that we see ourselves as separate. But at the same time, it's really important to be able to set that down and understand that we are not just connected, but that we're all one. It's all one thing going on. And I agree with him that a realization of the wholeness, the divine wholeness where nothing is lacking, is the ultimate goal we seek. Nothing is lacking. Nothing is lacking. And if we get to that place where we really believe that, or even turn it around to a positive statement instead of a move away from statement, where we have everything that we could possibly need, always. If we held that consciousness, that would be true in our lives. But like everybody, we go, oh, look at this problem. Oh no, what do I do? And we fall into the trap. So ultimately, that's what we would love. God's wholeness, a realization of God's wholeness where nothing is lacking. Thank you, Roy Eugene Davis. So, tonight we're talking about this idea of the recognition of the divine. Recognizing it is the first step of treatment. That's what it's called. It's called recognition. But to do that, we probably have to have some sense of what this divine is. What are we talking about? So I have stuff that I want to share with you about that. We'll start with the names of God. This could be fun. Let's just do this on the board. I'll go first. All right, I did my part. Who's got a name for God?
Creator.
Creator. Okay.
Source. Love. Energy. Inner being. Father.
Hang on a second, I'm a slow writer. Inner being. Okay.
Spirit.
Hold on, I got one over here. Father. Thank you. Anybody want to do the one that goes next to that one? Mother. I once did that to my Baptist mother. I said, don't you think God's a woman? Oh, she went crazy. That was probably a sin to do that to her.
Spirit.
Spirit, very good.
Papa.
Okay, Papa.
From the movie Shack. The Shack.
I'm going to put next to it that other word. Abba.
Is.
Is? Okay.
I am.
There you go. I am. I think that may be on that, somewhere on that graphic. Maybe not. Okay. Who had one?
Joy.
Mine.
Mind. Okay.
Yahweh.
How do you spell that?
Yahweh. WHWH. Depends on where you say it.
Why, is that it? Did I do it right? I actually have it written down. Maybe I should. It is YW, isn't it? Yeah, it's YW. I have 3 doctorates, and none of them are in spelling.
Yeah, Y-E-W. I've seen it spelled the other way.
Y-A-W.
Where's my, oh, I know where my list is. Hold on, bear with me.
Y,
This will be helpful for me.
Y-A-H.
Y-A-H-W-E-H. So we'll fix this. Y-A-H-W-A-H.
How about Heavenly Father
Okay,
and Holy Spirit? Those
okay.
are ones I grew up with.
There you go.
How about love?
I'm going to put heavenly here. I believe we've got love here.
Oh, good.
Allah.
Ah,
That's a good one.
let's not misspell that.
A-L-L-A-H.
It is 2 L's, thank you.
God, never ending.
Lord.
Yep, that one too.
There we go.
Lord.
Jesus.
Okay.
Incarnation.
He said otherwise, but a lot of people, go that way.
But other people call
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
Life.
Life, okay.
And light. Light. Sorry.
I have more.
Peace. Peace is
Nah, you guys you're getting away from God.
Jehovah.
Those are
Yeah,
characters.
Jehovah, there's one.
Ah, yes.
J-E.
Yeah, you could say that as long. You could say that.
Mind if I add a few?
Sure.
No,
Yeah.
Great Spirit? Is that what you mean?
Great mystery. I always like that one.
Mm-hmm.
Hindu, Brahman?
They called it Great Spirit too, didn't they?
Yeah.
Goddess.
Absolutely. Let's put goddess up there. Have I run out? No, I haven't put mine up here yet.
Don't leave yours out.
Divine presence. That's my favorite one.
Power.
I think, again, we're getting into descriptors rather than names. Although, I would say that name means, and I think that may actually be on the next slide, name means nature. So, when you're talking about power, you could certainly argue that. There we go. So I'll write down power rather than being resistant here. There we go. Make sure. I think that's got my list pretty much. No, here's one. Elohim. Okay, here's the question. Which one's right?
All of them.
All of the above.
Or none of them?
God doesn't care.
If God cared. So in the Hebrew faith, in the most ultra, it's not conservative. What do they call people in the Hebrew faith? The highly disciplined students of the Orthodox is the word. Thank you. Orthodox Jews say you don't call the name, that you never write it, you never say it. That's an interesting way to approach it. That everything would fall short. So, what do you do with that?
Yeah, how do you pray?
You don't talk to an outside God, I would imagine. Wouldn't that be cool? So the point I make with all of this is that anything really would fall short, because it's all limited into some human perspective. One of my favorite ways to talk about this idea of the divine comes from the philosopher Spinoza. And in his writings in the Ethics, he said that if a triangle were to perceive and express an understanding of the divine, that it would describe it as a triangle. So what happens is, what he's saying there is that human beings perceive God by human terms. You know, and the way, even in the early scripture writings in the Judeo-Christian Bible, it says that man was created in the likeness and image of God, which, if you think about it, is a way of saying God's like us, which makes us feel comfortable, because if we're going to have an outside God, we'd want them to be like us so that they would understand. Wasn't there a song that was out at one point, "What if God was one of us?" Yeah. You know, the idea of that is comforting. It feels okay. You know, I want to have a relationship with God. So if I'm going to do that, God's got to be like me for me to be able to feel comfortable having a relationship. Yeah, but what you're giving up to do that is a bunch. You're giving up a ton. So the idea of naming God is to try to identify the nature of the divine. Can we do that? Well, I think we can give it a go. We can certainly try to do it. So here are two ways of describing the divine that kind of fit into this thing we call New Thought. Now, I'm not talking about science of mind, I'm talking about the bigger group, which includes unity and divine science, and probably a lot of other groups that would fall into the same philosophical range of what we have. Two ways of doing this. The first way is called Pantheism. Anybody know what Pantheism is?
Nature.
That's part of it, yeah. Actually, nature would be one way to describe that. I'm looking for my list. There it is. So pantheism is where someone believes that God is everything. God is everything. That sounds universal. It sounds complete, right? Yeah, maybe. And lots of really great thinkers are pantheists. Let me give you some examples. The Tao, as originally written by Lao Tzu, is pantheistic. Poets, William Wordsworth, Walt Whitman, Henry David Thoreau, were all people that had a pantheistic point of view. D.H. Lawrence, Albert Einstein, Frank Lloyd Wright, Carl Sagan. Remember Carl Sagan? Billions and billions of stars. And James Cameron. All believe that the physical universe is the presence of the divine. Then there's another way to look at it, and it's called Panintheism. So again, pantheism is that all is God. Panintheism is that all is within God, but that God is bigger than all. Now, not in physical form, but in essence. Let me tell you who expresses in terms of panentheism. Plato, Meister Eckhart, Spinoza, my great guy, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Ernest Holmes. The Gnostic Gospels in Christianity were written from a pantheistic point of view. I find fascinating. In the Gospel of Thomas, it's written, "Lift up a stone and you will find me there." That's not making the stone the focus, but that the presence of the divine is there and everywhere else, no matter what's going on. So it's really subtle, and I've done this in classes before and had people go, "What? What's the difference? I don't see the difference." Well, there's quite a difference. It may seem subtle, but I invite you to explore this idea of everything existing within the divine, but not being limited to it. Here's a quote from Holmes that really speaks to this. This comes from our Declaration of Principles. We believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, one indestructible, absolute, and self-existent cause. This one manifests itself in and through all creation, but is not absorbed by its creation. In other words, there's nothing to worship in any physical form. That God is there, but God's everywhere, and God's greater than that form. The manifest universe is the body of God. The body of God, not the whole of God. It is the logical and necessary outcome of the infinite self-knowingness of God. In the book that I'm asking you to read, in the preface, I think it's the preface or the foreword, whichever. No, I guess it would be the preface because Marilyn did the foreword. So in the preface of the book, I explore that idea that rather than having a God that created stuff out of itself that it could watch that was separate from itself, what if it created everything as itself? And then it could experience itself, because without physical form, how could anything be experienced? Experience requires time and space. It requires form so that there's something to experience and something to express into. So that being so, that gives us the opportunity to see God as not something that is the creator of stuff outside of itself, but that it's actually the creator of itself, of its own presence, as everything. And then it can have that relationship, which goes back to the quote from Roy Eugene Davis, where he talked about that. At one point in that quote that we put up there, he talked about the idea that it's the self-knowingness of God that we all seek. That's what this whole thing is about, so that God can know itself. So that's what we're doing. Yay. Any thoughts on this? Anybody have any reflection they'd like to share?
Can you just repeat that?
Oh, you ask a lot of me. What is it you want me to repeat?
You said God is not the creator of everything outside itself, but rather the creator as itself.
Yeah, say that sounds good. That'll work, as itself. Okay.
Isn't that here?
Oh, well, let's see. If you're going to talk, you got to talk into the mic. Or all the other people.
I only have 3 words to say.
It's all right. They'll wonder what those were if they can't hear them. I guess I could have.
My 3 words are here,
You
there,
need to
and
hold the
everywhere.
mic closer, it's not picking you up.
Here, there, and everywhere.
Yes, here, there, and everywhere.
Expound on that.
Huh? Well, here,
Talking to the mic.
here.
At the point of the body,
God lives, no, not the body. God lives in each breath that we take.
right?
Because we cannot exist without a breath. And so knowing that, with each breath that we take, we breathe in God and we breathe out God. We cannot be separate from a breath, and we cannot be separate.
That's exactly
from
right.
God.
Of course. Very nice.
Here, there, and everywhere.
Very good. Thank you. Any other thoughts? Thank you. All right, so we're going to continue this conversation about what God is, and understanding that we are just scratching the surface of this. So I want to talk about the aspects of the divine that are absolute. These have been around for a long time. They're used in traditional Christian philosophy or religion, but we have a different take on it. So we're going to go through them one at a time. There's 3. God is omnipotent, meaning God is all-powerful. Now, what other religions that see God as an outside, existing outside of us, that would mean too is that the divine has some power over us, so that we are sent to heaven or hell based on the likings of this divine presence, this entity. That's not what we believe. We believe that the all-powerfulness, the omnipotence of the divine means that all power is God, meaning that I raised my arm. I used energy to do that. That was God. My heart beats. It's God. Earthquakes, hurricanes, floods, it's all God. It's all the natural unfolding of the physical experience as the divine. And that's the omnipotence of God. It's the power of the presence of God in and through all things. And that's really important because as we move through this process of studying spiritual mind treatment, it is important for us to know that God is all-powerful. It's essential that we recognize that and use that to our benefit. The next one is omniscience, meaning that God is all-knowing. Now, in more traditional circles, that would mean that God knows what you're doing, that God knows what you're thinking, that God knows everything about you. I remember once some little kid hearing about the omnipresence and omniscience of the divine and saying, does that mean God is watching me when I'm in the bathroom? And the minister said, well, sure. And it freaked the kid out. The all-knowingness of God is not knowing about us. It's all-knowing is God. All intelligence is God. All thinking is divine. There is no separation from the divine and any form of cognitive understanding of anything, far beyond the limits of the human mind. You know, we have that infinite mind, but we tend to use it in a finite way. We tend to use it to get through our day, to achieve the things that we want to achieve. That's only logical. But it's true that the absoluteness of the divine is exactly that, absolute, meaning that all information is available to us. And if we truly believed that, we could conjure up knowing pretty much anything, which I think is fantastic. And the third one is omnipresence, meaning God is everywhere. That was probably a better time to tell that little joke about the kid. But the idea of the presence of the divine being everywhere means that God's right there next to you in traditional terms. That's not the way we see it. If God is omnipresent, then God must exist at the point of me and you. That there is no delineation between where God is and where everything else is, including me. And of course, from our individual perspectives, the most important thing to have an understanding of is where we are. So that omnipresence of the divine, meaning everywhere present, means that there is no separation between anything, because there's only one thing going on. Any thoughts on these three concepts? Okay. This speaks to that last one, the omnipresence idea, and it comes from Judge Thomas Troward, who was the first president of the International New Thought Alliance when it was in England. He was actually Scottish. He grew up in India when India was a province of Great Britain, and became a judge in India. And of course learned the Hindu ways of those people. And he came up with this, which in his Edinburgh lectures on mental science, which he gave after he retired and moved back to Scotland, this is the most dazzling statement in that writing. It goes like this: if we can conceive of anything entirely devoid of the element of extension in space, it must be present in its entirety, totality, anywhere and everywhere. That is to say, at every point in space simultaneously. What he means by devoid of the element of extension in space is that it transcends space. That the divine transcends, the divine is not in any way restricted by time and space. It transcends that. And if that is so, then it must exist at every point in its entirety. What does that mean? That means that the God at the point of me is all of God. It's all of God. It is the entire creative presence that created the cosmos. It's at the point of me. Wrap your minds around that one. That's amazing. That means we have absolutely no limitations other than the ones we set on ourselves. One of the most amazing characters that I have known in this lifetime was an Indian guru named Sai Baba. And someone once asked Sai Baba how he could do the things that he could do, and he could. Here's a quick story about Sai Baba. He's getting a haircut and a shave, and the barber is lamenting that his son won't come see him. And Sai Baba jumps up out of the barber chair and runs out of the barber shop. And a couple of minutes later, he comes back in and sits down in the chair and says, "Okay, continue." You don't ask Sai Baba what he's doing, so the barber just continued his work. 3 days later, the son of the barber showed up in his father's shop. And the father was elated. He says, "How is it that you've come to be here?" He said, 3 days ago, this crazy man with shaving cream on his face walked into my home and said, "You go see your father." And this was 1,000 miles away. How do you do that? When people ask him, "How do you do the things that you do?" his answer was, "Well, you think that you're God. I know that I'm God." That's the difference. So it's a matter of scope. And the more we can understand and accept and embrace and embody this idea that we are the divine, infinitely present at the point of us, the more we are able to accomplish the things that we seek to accomplish in this lifetime. It's really just that simple. That's the thing about metaphysics. It's simple. It's just doing it that gets complicated. But the actual premise of it all is very, very basic.
Can you spell Sai Baba?
Saibaba, 2 words. Check him out. He's got a big afro, always wear orange robes. What a presence. I could tell all night, I could tell you stories about Sai Baba. But that's not why we're here, so I won't. All right. Thank you, Judge Troward. What is it that we are to know about this thing called the first step of treatment? It's called recognition. It's about recognizing the divine presence. That's the point of it. So I'm going to do this 5-step treatment. And the first step is to speak of this divine presence. What do I say? What do I do? How does that work? Well, there's certain things to know that will help with this. And I think I want to start this conversation by saying, don't get caught. If you're going to do spiritual mind treatment, don't get caught thinking you should say the same words in the recognition step every time. Some people think that that's fine. They go, "Oh, I just say these words and it takes me right into the state of doing it." Well, maybe, but what are you doing to really expand on your awareness of the divine if you say the same thing every time? So I really encourage people, and I try to do this myself. I'm not always that good at it, but I try to be present with this idea of the divine and what that means in this moment. And I've got some steps here to help us look at how that works. First one is to understand that we are not talking about getting to a point and having this figured out. If anyone here thinks they fully understand what the presence is, you are misinformed. Because we're all on this trek of evolving in our understanding of the divine. People have spent lifetimes in monasteries and temples trying to understand this concept, meditating for many hours every day to open up to this idea of what is this thing. And we can get closer. And I frankly think that our methodology in this teaching is one of the easiest ways to do it. Some people that hear how we do this, that come from those highly disciplined movements in Buddhism and Hinduism and other faiths, see what we do and are dazzled by it because we come to it as beginners all the time, where they've spent years and years and years working on it to get to the same place that we're getting. So it's kind of nice to know that we've got not, I don't want to say it's easy, but that we've got a way of doing this work that doesn't encumber us with years and years of treacherous sitting in a lotus position and doing the things that other people have done. And bless them for their good work of awakening to what they can, but we can do it our way, and it seems to work. First thing to know is you're never done. You're never done understanding the divine. You're only on the path. Next thing to know is that our personal power dwells in our understanding. We are only as powerful as we understand the divine to be. We cannot be more powerful than that. Step 2 is about identifying ourselves. We'll deal with that next week. But for tonight, the idea is you must start with the biggest understanding of God as you possibly can. That's the starting point. And so in my early days of doing spiritual mind treatment, I would try to gather up as much of the cosmos as I could imagine. The power of it, these monstrous, massive masses of rock swirling around bodies of fire by the billions. All of it set in chorus by this divine presence. And just kind of get the sense of how extraordinary that is. From the place of being a single human being on planet Earth, of being in a body on planet Earth, and to realize that all of that, far beyond my understanding or my ability to grasp it, is this incredible power going on in the universe. But it's a nice place to play. It's a nice place to start getting a sense of what you're dealing with. So it's important to get a sense of the power of the divine that way. We reach out into life and experience the magnificence of spirit. That's kind of that thing I was saying about reaching out. A lot of people still will say God is in the rocks and the rivers and the oceans and the mountains. And those are all nice thoughts, but they're pretty small compared to the vastness of the divine. And frankly, don't say that God is in. The truth is that everything else is in God. That's the higher understanding, is that we all dwell in that magnificent matrix of presence that has no beginning and no end. It's brilliant. It's just amazing. So I think what I'm saying, that in doing your first step of treatment, go into a state of awe. Be dazzled by the presence. Be emotionally moved by this idea of the presence. As Holmes said in that one of those quotes that I shared with you, it's not about the words. It's about the consciousness that's created out of that. And what I find is that the words are only part of it for me. I'm pretty visual. So I can close my eyes and see things and use that as part of my treatment. I can't say it. I can describe what I'm seeing, but it's enough for me to see it. Just by seeing it in my mind's eye, I'm impressing it upon the law. So use whatever tools you have in this state to get a sense of the divine. And at the same time, we know that the essence of spirit is invisible. It's not a physical thing. It transcends that. It created physical form, but it's not limited in any way to it. So the work is to capture it without limiting it. And, that's virtually impossible, but it's certainly a worthwhile endeavor to help expand how we perceive the divine. And the last one of these ideas to use in your first statement is to gather up our best understanding and embrace it. Own it. Go through that, whatever process you want to, that gives you the biggest and fullest and richest essence of understanding around that, and then just own that and claim it in your consciousness, to know that is your current place of understanding the divine, and that place will continue to grow and expand in your consciousness because you say so, because that's what you want to do. So these are the elements and why this first step is so important. Some would say, you get this step and you got the whole thing. I think there's a little more to do, but really, it's maybe the biggest hurdle to get over, is to not to fall into the limited thinking that we all do all the time about what God is. Even saying that, like where we started, the name of God, giving it a name limits it. Yet we're doing the best we can, and we continue to expand in it. So those are kind of my little ground rules for how to address the first step. Important again, don't get caught saying the same words over and over again. Your mind loves to do that because it remembers them, and they really sound great. But challenge yourself to see God freshly every single time you do a treatment. Okay. Here we go. So some ideas on creating a recognition statement. And I think if you've got the book, there's a page at the end of the chapter on the first step that gives you some places to do this. Gives you a whole page to it's got blank lines, and it gives you a place to actually start looking at what you can say about the divine. And it's really kind of good to write it down so that you can refer back to it. Your early shots at doing this. And here's some things to think about around that. First thing I always do is empty my mind, because wherever I am and whatever I've been doing has nothing to do with where I'm about to go. So as best you can, take a breath, take 2 breaths. When I do my treatment in the morning, which I haven't really talked about, I always want to meditate beforehand, just to slow it all down. And I've only been up a short time, but still, my mind can have chatter. We all can have chatter. I've done a whole class on monkey mind. All that, what's going on inside there? Let it all go. Let it all go. And bring to it a freshness of the moment. Breathe into it. And as you begin, do it from that emptiness, an empty vessel, ready to be filled with a greater understanding. Be aware of the reason for your treatment. Maybe something's going on that you want to shift in your life. You want to change a condition. That's perfectly acceptable. As I talked about yesterday, that's not my favorite part of this. To me, this is all about expanding on my awareness of life. And so mine is that, going back to the quote from Roy Eugene Davis, that ultimately this is about realizing that we already have everything. So that's kind of where I want to start in my morning as I come to a place of claiming what I will experience that day. But I come to this moment knowing that there's some things on my plate. There's some project going on. There's something to write. There's someone to meet with. And knowing about that helps me get there. So know why you're treating. Maybe it's specific. Maybe it's more general. Doesn't matter. Know why you're doing it. Have that in your mind before you get going on it. If Spirit is the solution, what attributes best apply to the outcome you seek? This is Science of Mind 101, that if there's a problem, if there's a condition that you find unattractive, unhelpful, what could this be? A problem at work. A coworker is a jerk. And you would rather have a work environment that is more pleasant. So, what is the attribute of the divine that speaks to that? Peace. And the thing is if you've got a condition you're not comfortable with, or isn't working for you, the first thing to do, don't go into judgment about it, but recognize what the opposite of it is. And it will be one of these things. These are Troward's and Holmes' 7 attributes of the divine. And pretty much it covers the spectrum. Peace, power, beauty, love, joy, life or light, and wisdom. These are the attributes of the divine. They're also the attributes of you. And if the divine dwells at the point of view in its entirety, then, and not in your body, but in your consciousness, then these attributes belong to you as well. So which one are you going to focus on? Because when you do your treatment, when we get into the third step, and we'll spend an entire night on the third step, we'll talk about how this idea of identifying an attribute is where your focus goes. You don't focus on the problem, the condition that you don't want. You don't talk about it going away. You don't focus on it being wrong. You don't do anything with it. You pretty much leave it alone. You put all your attention on the thing you want to have in your life. You cannot be denied these things. No one can be denied these things because they are intrinsic within you. So when you identify the one that is the elixir to the condition that's going on right now, that's the one you're going to focus on in your treatment. And then finally, the last thing you're going to look at here is to declare your highest understanding of spirit. Once you've got that, and somewhere in this that you say about the presence in this first step includes that attribute or attributes. Sometimes there's more than one that applies. But say them and know that that's the essence of the divine that you're focusing on this time. And that's the thing that you're going to have as your theme through your whole treatment. Maybe it's peace, maybe it's beauty, maybe something is really hard right now. And you want to focus on the beauty of your life, the beauty of life itself. That's a powerful thing to do. Or maybe it's actually power itself of recognizing that a magnificent essence and force within your life is you. That nobody's keeping you back. Nobody's holding you back. No, you're not a victim to anyone. It may look like it. Other people may describe it that way. But it's not true. The truth is that you are free and clear about who you are as soon as you choose to be. And that if you're not free, it's your doing. Any thoughts on this? All righty then. So what you're going to do is you're going to read, if you've got the book, from the beginning to page 24, and that will align with what we've talked about tonight and prepare you for step 2. So what we're going to do, the way this is going to fall out is we're going to do, we did step 1 tonight, we'll do step 2 next week. I don't know, I may actually include step 3 in the second class. And then the third class would then be the fourth and fifth steps of Thanksgiving and release. And we'll explain all of those as we go. So just so you know that the steps of treatment, if you weren't in the room yesterday, I think most of you were, is that the first step is what we've talked about here, recognition of the divine. The second step is identification, which means identifying with that, making everything that you say that is the presence is also your presence. The third step is realization, which is to realize that things already exist in your life the way you want them. And when you're clear about that, then you give thanks for it and let it go. And there's all kinds of nuances in how to do that we'll go through as we do this step by step, week by week. We're taking this down to 4 weeks so that we can do this and complete it the second week in November. And let me tell you what's going to happen after that. After that, I'm going to do a 4-week class on treating for other people. Now, what's interesting about that is, if you haven't done this class, and I've taught this class many times, so, in fact, before it was 6 weeks. So whether you take this class or you've done it before, you're eligible as having that as your prerequisite to come into a class to treat for others. But you can't come in this class and start by treating for others. That's dangerous. So I'm just letting you guys know that because you're here, you'll be qualified to take that next one if you'd like. Most people really like treating for other people. It's actually easier than treating for yourself. Treating for yourself is difficult because you know why your life is so messed up. You got your reasons all lined up. You can explain it all. That's the way people are when they come to me with a challenge and they want me to treat for them. They understand their problem. They're experts on it. They know when it started. They know how it happened. They know about the awful people that made it so. And they go on and on about that. They're experts on it. And when I say, but what do you want? Their answer usually is, I want it to go away. Well, what are you going to replace it with? I don't know, really. Really. So that's why people don't get very far with all of that. I had a colleague up in Illinois write a poem recently, and either that or it was lyrics to a song, and used one of the illustrations I give as far as how everything that happens in our lives is our doing. This comes from my Native American teacher, Will Rockingbear, who said that blaming something else or someone else for your problems is like tying a rope around a tree, yanking on that rope as hard as you can and screaming at the tree to let go. When in essence, you did the whole thing. You're the one that set it all up. Maybe not consciously, but you did. And everything that's going on in your life is your doing. And the joy of that is that anything that you've created, you can create something else. So we're never limited to the idea that that we have to deal with some problem. You know? And sometimes the way that we resolve things is by leaving our bodies. That's okay. We're all going to do that at some point. So that's not a wrong way to do it. And there's lots of other ways to do it. So everybody gets their choice, how they want to do it. So do we have any thoughts in the room? Anything anybody want to share about this journey through the first step of spiritual mind treatment, recognition? Does anyone else need a book to take home so that they can do this exercise? If you've got your own book, I encourage you to write your answers in it. A ministerial student out in Texas some months ago sent me a package and with a note that said she had been at a used book sale. And not at a church. It was just a general used book sale, I think in the Houston area. And she found 3 copies of my book. And they were all covered with notes. That the people that had owned them took copious notes and wrote in the margins and circled things and highlighted things. And it was so joyful to go through that and see that. I actually tithed to that woman for doing that because it really made my day. And those obviously they're owned by people I don't know. So it's always fun to see that there's being good use of this. And so I encourage you not to be one of those that likes to have your books unmarked up. But if you're sharing it with someone, maybe it doesn't work for you to do that. So do we have any thoughts? Anything else anybody wants to share tonight? Well, it seems that I've gone through my stuff. We're a little early, but I don't think that's a crime. So what we're going to do is take our offering tonight. And let me just talk about that for a second, why we do it this way. Most of the centers for spiritual living, at least in the United States, this is probably true in other places too, charge a specific fee for classes. And, fees can range, but what I have discovered is that I much prefer to invite everyone to contribute every time they come, as opposed to paying $125 to register for a class. When I do that, what I find is that, and to be clear, many of our classes pre-pandemic had 100 people or more. So what we find is that more people will come be in the class if we don't put a restriction on the beginning of it. And we give people an opportunity to see how it works and to get something from it. What I also tell people, and tell my colleagues too, if they're going to use this method, is to explain to students that if there's no flow back, then it's probably true that you didn't get much out of it, because there's a thing that happens with that giving money to the center is that it's an exchange. And if you got something, if you feel really good about what you got, then support the center. And if you go, well, I'm really glad I was here, this was fun, and I'm not going to put any money in, What that basically means is, I didn't get anything, and that's what you're telling your subjective mind, is you didn't get anything. And if you think you're leaving with a bunch of wonderful information, chances are you're not. So, yes, the money absolutely supports us in paying our bills and keeping the lights on and taking care of our staff and doing the things that we do. And by supporting the center, it's also supporting you in your consciousness. So that's how we look at it and why we do it. So I'm going to go get the baskets, and this is your opportunity to take out anything you want to give. And if you did not come prepared to support the center tonight, that's fine. That doesn't make you wrong. What I would invite you to do, though, is to at least put a blessing in the basket. Something wonderful about these baskets. They get blessed all the time. They get blessed every time somebody puts something in them, and that includes energy. So if you've got something you're going to give, I invite you to take it out. Maybe hold it close to your heart. And know with me that God's still all there is. And that presence, that power is in everything, always, including our money, including that dynamic exchange of energy called currency. I know that as it comes to this center, that this center is blessed. And I know that as each person supports this center in that way, that they are blessed. And they are blessed by receiving the information and the ideas that were shared, and by opening up to possibilities in their lives, maybe more so than before. And being certain that that is the dynamic flow of Spirit, and one way that Spirit touches our lives, I bless it. And I know that whatever is given is divine and perfect in every way. And I simply let that be true in every way. Right here, right now, and always. And so it is. So everybody touch the basket. Thank you.
The ATM is also working,
Oh, yes, the ATM, that other way of blessings.
or the whatever.
Well, it's not an ATM, we'll call it donation station.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your interest in this teaching and in this thing called spiritual mind treatment. Thank you for supporting the center and for your continued journey on this path of awakening. Thank you for who you are in the world and the special gifts that you bring. And I know that we are all blessed as we do this good work. And I also know that as we leave this center tonight, that we are safe as we return home, that we take with us all the ideas that can ramble around in mind, and that will result in a lightness and a beauty that touches not only our lives, but all those lives that we touch far beyond. And knowing that this is so, in gratitude and love, I simply let it be all that it is, right now and forever. And so it is.